What if the Mulan you know had never existed? What if in another universe she had chosen a dark path, a very dark one? In this video, you will see a side of the story that no one had the courage to tell. Get ready, what comes next may change everything you believe about it. The empire was plunged into war. The borders were slowly crumbling under attacks from the north. Reports of destroyed villages, massacred men, and broken families spread like a plague. Stability was crumbling. In an attempt to contain the enemy advance, the emperor decreed that each family must send a man to the battlefield. In the small village where the Fa family lived, this announcement came as a sentence. The name of Fa Zhou, an old man, weakened and marked by years of illness, was on the imperial edict. The order was clear. He was to present himself, even with his knees shaking and his body unable to resist the early morning cold. Tradition dictated that he should go, and he did not hesitate. Faced with the news, he put on his old armor with effort and prepared to leave. The family watched everything in silence. Mulan watched her father from afar, trying to find some doubt, some hesitation in that look, but she only saw pride. No one in that house dared to contradict him. Not her mother, not her grandmother, not her. It was as if the old man's life no longer mattered in the face of honor. The duty to serve the empire came before any feeling, before logic, before survival. She knew that if he left, he would return in a coffin, or maybe not even that. The empire did not send condolences, it sent orders. The war was not fair, it never had been. It was a machine that crushed men in the name of an ideal that no one else understood. That night, the silence in the house was louder than any scream of despair. Her father's breathing was heavy. Fear did not reach him. Mulan, alone in the corner of the room, felt her blood boil. Not of fear, but of decision. She understood that if anything was to be done, it would have to come from her. There was no heroism. In that environment, there was condemnation. The only way to save her father would be to take his place, not by sacrifice, but by strategy. And to do that, she would have to stop being a daughter. She would have to become something else, something the world did not expect. The house was plunged into silence. The sound of the light rain hitting the roof was the only noise that filled the darkness of the early morning. Mulan was awake, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, her body still, but her mind in constant motion. That would be her father's last sleep, before he left, the last dawn with him alive. And no one seemed to care about that. It was as if they had already accepted that death was inevitable. But Mulan did not accept it. Not because she loved her father. She did not know if she felt love. What she had was something denser, a weight that she had carried since childhood, a mixture of anger, guilt, and exhaustion. That night she did not cry, she did not pray. She simply stood up slowly, without making a sound, and walked to the family temple. In front of the ancestral statue, she lit an incense stick. She closed her eyes. She said she would take her father's place, not out of honor, but because she needed to escape that destiny she never chose. The smoke rose slowly, as if time had stopped. That was not a prayer. It was a warning. When she returned to her room, she picked up her father's sword. She cleaned the blade. She sorted out her old combat clothes. She cut her own hair in front of the mirror. She watched the strands fall to the floor like dead leaves. At that moment, she knew that Fa Zhou's daughter was no longer there. She was preparing to transform into something else, something nameless, something that no one there would understand. Before leaving, she looked one last time at her father's bedroom door. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave a letter. She simply covered her tracks. She put on her boots, hid her face, and left before the sun had risen. While the village slept, Mulan left everything behind. Her home, her identity, her history. She didn't do it out of heroism. She did it out of rupture. And deep down, she knew there was no way back. The journey to the military camp was long, silent, and suffocating. Mulan walked among strangers, carrying on her body the weight of her father's armor, and inside, the emptiness of someone who no longer belonged anywhere. She didn't look anyone in the eye. With each step, she left behind more pieces of what she once was. She wasn't a man, but she wasn't a girl anymore either. She was something in between, something in transition, something that bled inside, but that no one would ever see. Upon arriving at the camp gate, she was searched like everyone else. No one's gaze lasted more than a few seconds. She was just another soldier among many, a new name, a silent presence. And that was exactly what she wanted, to disappear into the crowd, to be invisible to everyone until she was ready to be noticed in the right way. The smell of blood mixed with gunpowder, mud, and urine permeated the camp. Men screamed, trained, vomited. The war was already there, even without battles. Chaos was everyday life. Survival was a silent game. And Mulan observed everything with calm eyes, as if she had already known the scene before she even arrived. On the first day, she was assigned to basic tasks: digging trenches, carrying supplies, cleaning the wounds of injured soldiers. No one got too close. She spoke little. She only answered what was necessary. She didn't smile. She didn't complain. She was efficient, cold, and constant. The others were beginning to notice that there was something strange there. They didn't know what, but they felt it. During training, Mulan learned quickly, faster than anyone else. She observed the mistakes of others and avoided repeating them. Her body was small, but her precision was lethal. Over time, they began to respect her, but not out of affection. It was the kind of respect given to the unknown, to the dangerous. She wasn't there to make friends. She was there to become what she needed to be, and that would require control, coldness, absolute focus. She had entered as just another body, but she would leave as the woman who would change everything, even if that meant leaving a trail of fear wherever she went. The sound of drums woke the camp before the sun had even risen. The army would march. The order had been given. This would be the first combat mission. Nervousness ran down the soldiers' faces like sweat. Many vomited. Others trembled in silence. Mulan just watched. It wasn't fear that she felt. It was something else. A mixture of curiosity and anticipation, like someone waiting for the moment of a final test. On the way to the battlefield, the smell of burning flesh grew more intense with every kilometer. Devastated villages dotted the trail with charred houses and rotting bodies on the side of the road. This was not just a war, it was a warning of what would happen to those who did not obey. The Empire was willing to lose everything to maintain control, including their own souls. When the two armies finally met, the silence lasted only a few seconds. Soon, screams filled the valley. Men ran in opposite directions. Blades cut the air. Arrows crossed the sky. The earth shook beneath their feet. It was chaos without order. Mulan did not hesitate. She advanced. She did not fight with strength, but with precision. Each blow was calculated, each movement silent. While others screamed, she remained silent, as if this was the place where it finally made sense to be. She killed the first enemy by aiming for the throat. The second fell with a clean cut at the base of the spine. The third looked into her eyes before falling, as if he had recognized something. He said nothing. He just fell and stayed. When the dust settled, few were left standing. Many were dead. Among the survivors, their faces were covered in mud, blood, and fear. But hers remained clean. No scratches, no cuts, just steady breathing and a distant look, as if she were still at war inside. The soldiers began to look at her with a different kind of attention, no longer as just a recruit, but as someone who was born for this. And Mulan knew that from that moment on, she could no longer pretend that she was just one of many. She had left her mark. And where before there had been doubt, there was now fear. After the first battle, the looks changed. Mulan's name began to circulate among the superiors. Uninjured with a cold and efficient performance, she stood out in silence. She did not seek recognition, but recognition came, and she allowed it. She accepted the praise with an empty expression, as if she had already expected it. The soldiers avoided her in the tents, not out of contempt, but out of fear. They said that she slept with her eyes half open, that her breathing was so light that she barely seemed alive. Some said that she didn't sleep, that she sat still, staring into the darkness as if waiting for something to return from the darkness. A commander, impressed by her performance, promoted her to a small leadership position. Now, she commanded 5 other men who did not know that they were following orders from someone who had deceived them all from day one. She maintained her disguise with precision, her posture, her controlled voice, her walk. Every gesture was thought out, every word was measured. She left no room for error. During an inspection, one of the officers became suspicious. Her face seemed too soft. Her body structure was delicate. He began to observe her more closely. He asked questions about her past, her clan, her history. She answered everything calmly, without hesitation, but inside her, the tension grew. She knew that sooner or later, someone would see through the mask. To protect herself, she began to anticipate. She created different versions of herself for each group. To her superiors, she was the disciplined soldier. To the recruits, she was the silent and calculating warrior. To the victims, she was the faceless death. The confusion of identities was part of her plan. The truth for Mulan was something that could be molded, something that was only useful. If it could be manipulated, the deception began to bear fruit. The leaders began to trust her. They called her to strategic meetings. They asked for advice. And she gave cold, impersonal orders that increased the chances of victory, even if they cost more lives. The army began to gain ground. And in the midst of all this, no one asked who she was anymore. Asking meant knowing too much. And knowing too much on that battlefield meant dying sooner. Time passed. Battles became routine. Blood, screams, and death stopped shocking. For Mulan, it was all just a process. There was no emotional weight, no hesitation. War was, for her, a field of study, an environment where she tested her limits and her capacity for control. And in that scenario, she grew. Every decision she made on the battlefield was precise. Her group became known for returning with fewer casualties than any other. But there was a pattern. Whenever someone questioned her or disagreed with an order, that soldier died in combat. All of them, without exception. Many began to believe that she foresaw death. Others thought she chose who would die. No one said this out loud. As fear grew, authority came. Superiors saw Mulan as someone useful. She was given new roles. She was tasked with taking care of strategies, managing small units. Little by little, she began to overtake older soldiers. Commanders with decades of experience found themselves obeying someone who, officially, was just another soldier promoted on merit. Among the soldiers, the atmosphere was tense. Her presence caused an involuntary silence. It wasn't admiration, it was fear. Many avoided her gaze. Others whispered behind her back. But no one confronted her. The army gradually stopped questioning her orders, and the more they obeyed, the more she manipulated. Those who were close to her knew that something was not right. They noticed the way she reacted to the suffering of others. She showed no disgust, pain, compassion, or remorse. When the wounded asked for help, she watched them silently. When an enemy knelt down begging for mercy, she silenced him with her blade, expressionless. It was as if she were studying the pain, not participating in it. This coldness gave Mulan what she had always sought: control. Not only over the soldiers, but over the narrative. She chose what should be remembered and what should be erased. Each step was a construction. Each death a tool. On the battlefield, leadership is won with courage or with blood. Mulan used both, but the blood she made a point of seeing up close. The Northern Army advanced. The defense line was weakened. Supplies were beginning to run low. The enemy was fast, organized, and brutal. The leaders of the Imperial Army, pressed, did not know how to stop the advance. Mulan observed everything in silence. She showed no concern. She only studied. During a tense meeting between the commanders, she came up with a plan. It was simple. Sacrifice an entire village to the north, which was being used as a support base, to lure the enemy into an area surrounded by narrow gorges. There, with traps and soldiers positioned on the slopes, the enemy would be cornered and destroyed. The problem was that the village was still inhabited by civilians. Entire families would be used as bait. There was resistance among the officers. Some claimed it would be a massacre. Others said the empire could not sacrifice innocents. Mulan simply replied that war made no distinctions. Their hesitation was seen by her as weakness. Her voice, though firm, was cold. She presented the statistics, the numbers, the map. No emotion, just logic. The High Command approved the plan. For the first time, Mulan's coldness was interpreted as strategic genius. She was placed in charge of the operation. The army moved quickly. The village was partially evacuated, but dozens of residents remained to avoid arousing suspicion in the enemy. Mulan assured them that it was necessary. When the enemy arrived, the plan worked. They were surrounded, attacked from all sides. The victory was overwhelming, but the bodies of the civilians were mixed in with the wreckage. Among the victims were children, women, unarmed men. And for Mulan, they were all just part of the statistics. The soldiers celebrated, but her eyes remained cold. There was no pride, there was no guilt. She knew that in order to win, she needed to go beyond morals. She needed to act like war, ruthless, objective, and efficient. This victory cemented her reputation. Now Mulan was seen as essential. The soldier who not only fought but decided the course of the war, and no one dared to question the methods that had led her there. After the victory in the siege, Mulan's name spread across all the battlefronts. The soldiers spoke of her as a living legend. The commanders treated her as a central piece in the structure of the army. But what few realized was that this figure, surrounded by admiration, grew not only in prestige, but in real power. She began to have access to confidential information. She participated in high-level strategic decisions. She was no longer just a field leader. She was among those who shaped the course of the war. Her presence was constant in the tents of the High Command, even among officers who did not know her real name. The Emperor, informed of her deeds, personally requested that she be decorated after the war. But that did not interest her. Public recognition was useful, but only if it strengthened her control. She did not want fame. She wanted domination. And she dominated from within, in silence, in fear, in decisions that seemed logical, but hidden intentions. Those who began to notice her excessive influence disappeared. A lieutenant who questioned one of her orders was found dead outside the camp with his neck broken and his eyes gouged out. The investigation was quickly closed. Another soldier who claimed to have seen Mulan communicating with an enemy went mad during the night and had to be tied up. No one else mentioned the matter. Mulan understood the system and knew how to use it to her advantage. She created tension among the leaders. She sowed doubts. She encouraged internal rivalries so that no one would have time to question her role. When the generals turned against each other, she was always on the sidelines, observing, analyzing, ready to take the right step at the right time. There was no longer any doubt within the army. Mulan was indispensable. For many, victory depended on her, and she knew it. She used this dependence as a weapon. She transformed loyalty into submission. Where there had once been command, there was now blind obedience. She had risen to the top, not by the strength of her sword, but by the power of manipulation, precision, and a total lack of morals. There was no longer honor in her actions, only strategy, and everyone around her began to realize that Mulan was no longer fighting for the Empire. She was fighting for something much more personal. The enemy army was fragmented. After successive defeats, successful ambushes, and internal desertions, the Northerners began to retreat. Intelligence confirmed that the rival commander had been wounded. The Empire, once cornered, was now advancing with full force. The end of the war was a matter of time. Mulan was assigned to lead the final assault. The order was simple: defeat the remaining enemy troops and capture the opposing general alive. It was the most important mission of her military career. All eyes were on her. But the truth was, victory was never Mulan's primary goal. War had become her natural environment. It was where she controlled, manipulated, and survived. Peace threatened everything she had built. During the last offensive, the battlefield turned into a massacre. The enemy no longer fought with conviction. Many surrendered at the first sign of confrontation. And that was when Mulan acted. Ignoring the calls for surrender, she ordered that no prisoners be taken. She told her men that this was the only way to guarantee the future security of the Empire. A well-presented lie, an easy manipulation. When the enemy commander was finally located, seriously wounded and disarmed, Mulan entered his tent. No soldier accompanied her. She remained there for more than an hour. When she emerged, her hands were clean, but the general's body had been precisely dismembered. The officers pretended not to see. Victory was declared. The enemy army was annihilated. The Empire celebrated. The city bells rang. The population took to the streets. Mulan, however, remained silent. For her, this was not the end. It was merely a transition. Even with peace decreed, she did not dismantle her armor. She did not lay down her weapons. She did not approach ceremonies. She did not accept compliments. She avoided any kind of affection or exposure. She had won. But something inside her would not rest. She was restless, as if she already knew that the external war was over, but the internal one was just beginning. With the war over, the soldiers were dismissed. Each one would return to their land, carrying visible and invisible scars. Mulan's name had become a symbol. Among the high ranks, she was seen as an example of bravery and leadership. Among the soldiers, she was remembered with respect and fear. For the Empire, she was a living legend. But for her, all that was just noise. When she returned to the village, the landscape seemed smaller. The houses had not changed, but Mulan was no longer the same. She did not carry the gentleness of a daughter returning home. She walked like someone who had lost the meaning of simple things. Her mother recognized her from a distance, hesitantly. She opened her arms, but did not go to meet her. She waited. When Mulan approached, the hug did not happen. The silence between the two was stronger than any greeting. The grandmother watched her from afar with a blank look. The neighbors watched with fear. The warrior returned, but no one there knew who she was. They only knew what she had done, and rumors spread faster than her steps. During the following days, Mulan kept herself isolated. She rarely left the house. She avoided contact. Her eyes did not focus on anyone. They always seemed to be stuck in some distant thought, as if her body were present. But her mind remained on the battlefield. She did not smile. She did not speak. She just watched. A few nights later, the grandmother disappeared. Then came the mother. The house was silent. No movement, no candles lit. No one saw Mulan leave. No one heard screams. Only her disappearance. The neighbors began to report strange behavior. Sounds coming from the empty house, objects moving, whispers at night. The well in the center of the village dried up. Children claimed to have seen a woman in armor walking among the trees even when there was no moon. Later, Mulan's story was recorded as an example of courage. But her name was no longer spoken in the village. The house was avoided. The following generations learned to keep their distance. Some said that the real Mulan died in the war, and that what came back was only what was left of so much blood, so much coldness, so much silent decision. The empire had its peace, but something still breathed in that village, something that walked at night, nameless, without a shadow, and that whispered with an ancient voice, as if it still commanded an army that no one could see anymore. Now that you've seen what Mulan has become in this dark multiverse, tell me, would you still call her a heroine? Or could it be that deep down, she was always what the world feared? Stay tuned. Because stories like this don't just stay in the past. Sometimes they're just waiting for the right moment to start over.